Hi, I'm Peggy Kelly, and this is Good Morning Santa Paula. It's May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. And our guest today is Dan Singer, the city manager of Santa Paula. And Dan, nice seeing you, especially with your Cinco de Mayo bright colors on.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to doing some celebrating.
Oh, good, good. Absolutely. Well, there's plenty of places to celebrate, that's for sure. And speaking of which, we had a wonderful Cinco de Mayo celebration on Sunday in Santa Paula.
Oh, it was amazing. Talk about hitting a home run. Wall-to-wall people, especially people coming from out of town, which was lovely, and well-behaved crowd, great music, great vendors, families. And that fun's going to continue. We've got cruise night tomorrow night.
That's right.
And then we also have our farmers market, and I understand maybe some new vendors coming out as well. So,
and they're going to connect, correct?
Yes, we're hoping to do some realigning, but we won't be able to achieve all of that this month because the health department still needs to sign off on some changes in location. So we'll still have Santa Barbara Street where the farmers market is, and then we'll have cars coming all the way up Mill Street.
Oh, okay, good.
So
because I had put that in the paper, so
yeah,
I have enough arguments as it is. So, yeah, well, it's always so much fun. I mean, in cruise night, if people haven't gone to cruise night, like I wrote, they haven't been anywhere. They have to really attend.
It feels like a step back in time, doesn't it?
It does.
And how often do you get to walk down the middle of a historic Main Street and not have to worry about your safety, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And it's so beautiful to be surrounded. I mean, the thing that always struck me about cruise night was the fact that everything blends. The classic cars, our classic architecture.
Yeah.
You know, the decorations, everything. It is a step back in time. It's wonderful. That's why we're in the movies so much.
That's right.
Oh yeah. And well, I'm looking forward to it, and I plan on seeing you there.
I'll see you out there.
Yeah, and now we'll talk about some city business. We've got redistricting. Let's talk about that. I know you had a council meeting last evening, and update us on what's going on with that, please.
Yeah, so the process that's in front of us now, because we've gotten basically a demand letter that is going to force us from going to what we would call at-large elections to district elections. And essentially what that means for our 5 city council seats is that the community as a whole will no longer be voting on all 5 members, but instead we will work to carve up the city into 5 somewhat equal kind of territories. And if you live and reside in that territory, in that district, you'll then just vote for 1 council person every 4 years. This process is going to take a little bit of time and won't be effective until November of 2024. I know that seems a long ways off, but it's because we're not going to be able to do it quick enough to make it into this year's election, and then it'll be 2 more years from then.
Absolutely.
The council is also supporting an intentional process, one that involves the community. And so we anticipate a number of workshops and public hearings, making sure that we're also doing some of that in Spanish, so that we're really inviting the public to participate in this decision-making. And one nice thing is that we'll hire what's called a demographer, somebody who actually helps us with the kind of demographics of the makeup of these territories, and will have a tool, like a web-based tool, where people can actually go in and play around and say, well, let's see, if I put this neighborhood over here,
how interesting,
what would happen? And how can you shape and reshape these 5 districts? So that'll be kind of fun. It'll allow individuals or groups, some of our nonprofits might want to get involved and say, oh, we want to sponsor a district that looks this way, and we think this is the best approach. The law requires us to look at each district being roughly equal in terms of the makeup, and we're talking about basically adult population, not also children population, because it has to be the voting population. The areas of that district, the boundaries that are drawn also have to be contiguous. So you can't say a district can have a neighborhood over here and then a neighborhood over here. They have to be connected.
Mhm.
And then you're encouraged to use any natural or geographic boundaries. So if you have a freeway like the 126 that kind of bisects your community,
Mhm.
then you might look at that from the standpoint of, well, should there just be a district that's south or north of that so that people aren't going north and south?
Mhm.
Or if there's a river or mountains that bisect a neighborhood. So it's kind of a fascinating process, and
It is, and it can be very complicated.
it can be very complicated. That's what the demographer's there for, to kind of be that reality check on the various options. So we expect to kick this off probably as early as June. We'll get a demographer secured in the month of May. And then throughout the summer, probably hold a series of workshops and meetings on it. Although, like I said, the outcome, even if it's approved, even if a final decision is made this year, the outcome won't take effect until the 2024 election cycle.
And I know that a question has come up quite a bit, and the council addressed it also last night about the school district and how the school district has done their districting now. And we cannot go ahead and explain why we just can't adopt their districts.
That's right. It would seem like the easy route to just say, well, just use those 5 districts, because then it's less confusing for the public too, right? Whereas our district boundaries might differ than theirs. And the reason is because the school district's boundaries are much broader than ours. So it goes beyond the city limits. And that enables them to make areas more contiguous, more compact than what we have. So we're going to have to stay within our city limits and respect those other natural boundaries we talked about.
Mhm.
And you're also supposed to look at neighborhood characteristics. So, for example, you wouldn't necessarily divide up, maybe, let's say, the people that live up on the hill or the Las Piedras community. You wouldn't want to split them into like 2 or 3 different neighborhoods.
Right.
Because they already they have a park, they have, churches, they have markets, they have a kind of a distinct development envelope, if you will. So you're supposed to try and respect those. Like you said, it's very complicated.
It really is.
But it's also fascinating. So
yes, absolutely.
it's also expensive. This was not something we had budgeted for, but the council did set $50,000 aside last night. We expect, all told, this will cost closer to $100,000. Some of that's just to pay the attorney who's challenged us. And then we'll go from there.
Well, it's going to be a very interesting process. Now, I had heard also, just as an aside, that Santa Monica has challenged this in court?
That's correct. There's been a number of challenges since the law was enacted by California voters back in 2004, I believe it was. No city that has challenged it has won. But in the case of Santa Monica, it has gone on appeal all the way up to the California Supreme Court and is before them now. We're not sure when the decision will be made, but Santa Monica's situation is really kind of almost opposite ours.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
So they're having trouble carving out a district that would be a majority minority.
Yes.
And in our case, we'd be the opposite of that.
Yes.
Interesting. Because we're 80% Hispanic. So it's not, in fact, it would be impossible to carve out a district that was non-Hispanic majority in our town. So yeah, so it'll be interesting to see where Santa Monica goes. The whole intention is to make sure that there's not racially polarized voting. You want to make sure that your minority communities, your communities of color, whether in our case that's Hispanic, but in many other cases that might be, an Asian culture, African-American group, that they have an opportunity to support a candidate
Absolutely.
that they reduce those barriers that might exist to raising money and putting your name out there, you know, on the ballot.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the positive about it. I mean, that's one thing. I'd always been a great believer that everybody should get the same amount of money to run for office, and that's it. And that's all they spend.
Yeah.
That doesn't go very far, but anyway, I mean, and it is very often, it is a matter of money, and somebody can have one supporter, and just by having $50,000, it can look like they've got a lot of supporters and gets their name out and gets elected. There you go,
That's right.
name recognition. So yeah, it certainly has many different facets. Okay, now this is something too that I guess you discussed last night in closed session, Santa Clara wastewater.
Yeah, so the city has been, we had significant losses as a result of the explosion that happened back in 2014. You've covered that extensively in your paper. I think the community, the scars of that event are still very real. We had not only firefighters and personnel that were personally, physically harmed, but we lost equipment
And are disabled.
And lost a lot of money.
Mhm.
And so we had joined with the county, as well as the, to a much lesser extent, but the cities of Ventura and Oxnard, who also responded to the event. But we had basically come together to pursue litigation against the owners of that treatment facility. And then that effort was kind of put on hold, or what's called stayed, in order to allow the criminal investigation to move forward first. And so that case has now been resolved. And we've started negotiations with the owners to try and extract as much of the $2 million that was lost in response to this tragic event. The city's portion of that is about 40%. Our losses were about $600,000, primarily equipment, but just in our response in general. And so the hope was that we would get all or some of that $600,000 back, and the county was taking the lead in pursuing this litigation. Well, they've now determined, they being the county, has determined that it's really in their best interest to fight this fight, to outsource those legal costs and to bring in some experts. And we really applaud them for that. Our city council is supportive of the litigation and trying to extract money out of the crooks who did this. The challenge we have is the county's now also asking each of the participating agencies to pay their fair share. And the estimated cost of this litigation is quite high. And so we would have to pay money out in order to, at some point, hope to get money back. But the reality is that we probably would never get back the investment that we would put in. The county's losses were much greater. And so it's still, as they would say, pencils out for them. But for us, it's become pretty clear that this just doesn't really pencil out. So the council decided last night that we would step aside from the litigation. We obviously want to support the county and give them the opportunity to try and get some of these funds back. Whether we ever see any of our losses back is unlikely, especially since we're stepping aside. But that's really the reason for the council's decision.
And I certainly understand that decision. I really do. It's just unfortunate that, nobody, they had, like you said, they had the criminal trial, and, and that was to bring justice to the people that were physically injured. This is a completely separate lawsuit. And people have kind of confused them over the years. And the other one was resolved, but the firefighters and the other victims still have not been paid. And now the city's, the city could eventually be paid, but at what price? And I certainly understand that. And it's really, it's a black eye on all different levels because of the fact it was illegal. It was they were prosecuted. Some people did cough up some fine money, but it's just justice is not being done on any level. So,
Yeah.
Anyway, but I certainly understand the council's action, and we'll talk about that more later.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm sure it was a difficult decision too, because we did have firefighters that we were permanently disabled, and their livelihoods, and a city employee.
Although this facility is outside of the city limits, as
Mhm.
you know, the damage was quite great to our town and the people involved. And so there is that emotional attachment to this, and it was not an easy decision for the council. It's just a question of, is this the best use of our funds to continue to put money out there, hoping that maybe we'll get some money back.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. So what are you going to spend $700,000 to get $600,000? I mean,
Right.
Yeah, I certainly understand.
Or spend 700,000 and only get 200.
Yeah, that's true, and only get 200,000. It's going to be very interesting, especially since, of course, with them putting it on hold for the criminal case, I can see why they're extending this civil matter.
Yeah.
But you think they'd resolve these things. Okay, let's talk about Measure T. And I know that last night you guys allocated some money over, and let's hear what's going on there. If you don't mind, Dan, give just a very quick explanation of what Measure T is.
Yeah, so Measure T is the sales tax, a 1 cent sales tax measure that voters in Santa Paula passed back in 2017. Well, in 2016, but then it started to take effect in 2017. It's been a true godsend for this community, originally bringing in close to $3 million a year. And those funds have been spent primarily on public safety and our streets, and also our youth through our parks and recreation programs and services. That money has grown substantially. And really what's happened, because it's a sales tax measure, but it's what's called a use tax. And what that means is that when you're buying products like on Amazon, or let's say Home Depot or Best Buy, even if you don't go down to Oxnard and buy them, and you buy them online, we get a good portion of that 1 cent.
Oh, okay.
Well, we get all of that 1 cent. And so we have pretty decent sales tax that we get for our shops here in town, bricks and mortar, and our restaurants and all that. But this use tax has even grown beyond our sales tax, and has continued to perform very well. I think the silver lining with COVID is that a lot of people stopped going out as much to shop and started doing more online shopping, and that has come to help us.
Yes.
So we went into the year with a budget of $3.4 million in Measure T funds. And we're now almost 10 months into our fiscal year. And we're already projecting that we're going to receive about $4 million. And so the Measure T committee met a few weeks ago. They had some excess reserves from last year of about 300,000. And they had this additional projection for the current year of over $400,000. And they made a recommendation last night to the council that those monies actually be put to good use. And I think the most exciting part of that is that the council embraced these recommendations and will be able to do road maintenance on Santa Barbara Street and Santa Paula Street and Virginia Terrace.
Oh.
And those are in addition to the regular street maintenance that we were planning for this summer. So really excited to see
that is exciting.
Yeah, that we're going to get a number of streets and neighborhoods accomplished with those funds. This is separate from the Harvest project, which has been delayed slightly, but is still scheduled to start at the end of summer. So there's going to be a lot of road construction going on, but I will say that our community's been very tolerant of all the nuisances that you have to put up with for a few days or a few weeks
Mhm.
in order to get better streets.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
thank you, members of the community, for your patience when we do our road work.
Mhm. And shopping Santa Paula and shopping online.
That's right. The council also authorized additional monies to go to some of our city facilities, some improvements. And for our youth, supported the purchase of a small passenger van to help with youth programs, more storage and equipment for them. They also put money aside for a comprehensive tree inventory.
Oh, great.
You know, we've put a new focus on what we call our urban forest, our street trees. And so that inventory will go a long way in helping us really document and know what trees we have where that are the city's responsibility. So, yeah, so it was really a feel-good moment for the council to be able to put some money back into the community in that way.
That's wonderful. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Now, and also we've got that beautiful background. Let me ask you about your background.
Yeah.
I know you're not standing on a mountaintop, but let me ask you, that is our beautiful Santa Clara River Valley.
That is. Compliments of, I think it was Jose Melgar who took some of the pictures. You know, we live in such an aesthetic, scenic location. We're really so blessed to be surrounded by mountains, surrounded by orchards and green, rivers, clean air, good weather. So it's always nice to show off those great attributes.
Absolutely. Well, really appreciate your visit today. Is there anything you'd like to add, or anything I should have asked you and I didn't? Or
I just hope to see community members.
Go away.
What's that?
I said, or do you just want me to go away?
No, never. We need you here. We look forward to seeing you and members of the community out at cruise night and out at farmers market, and shopping in town.
Okay, great. And listen, happy Cinco de Mayo.
Yes, same to you.
Okay, and everybody out there, if you go celebrate, be sure to not drink and drive. That's very important. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. There's an interloper in my office here, but have a wonderful weekend and be very careful, and just thank goodness that we live in the beautiful Santa Clara River Valley, and especially Santa Paula. And we'll see you next week. Once again, thank you. I'm Peggy Kelly with the Santa Paula Times. Nice seeing everybody out there. Bye-bye.